After the Army-Navy force traveled some 60 miles, Fort Henry slid into view. Early the next morning, Grant landed McClernand's entire division 3 miles to the north of the Confederate fort, and did so unopposed. Empty transports now steamed back to Paducah to pick up Smith's infantry division. Things were going well. Grant and Foote felt confident. But inside Fort Henry, Tillman did not. Fully aware that heavy rains had swollen the Tennessee, he knew Foote's buoyant flotilla would actually be able to gaze down on Fort Henry's earthworks. And indeed, it was bad. Part of the fort's low-lying grounds were under 2-foot puddles, its guns only 6 feet above water. The powder magazine threatened. And for weapons, many of Tillman's 2,600 men were armed only with shotguns and hunting rifles. The best armed, the 10th Tennessee. They had flintlocks from the War of 1812. Simply put, Fort Henry was in trouble. 7 Union gunboats with 54 heavy cannon planned to rain iron and lead on Henry's 17 guns and pin the fort's defenders down, while McClernand, and once they arrived, Smith's divisions would envelop the Confederate installation from behind. On the 5th of February, skies were leaden, gray. That night, more heavy rain. So much that Henry's parade ground disappeared underwater. A realist, Tillman decided he would evacuate the fort, but he wanted 1 hour of artillery fire to allow his troops a head start on the mired roads east to Fort Donelson. The next day, Thursday, the 6th, the skies cleared, and Foote's flotilla bore down at 11 a.m. 4 abreast they steamed. Inside Fort Henry, only artillerists remained to man the guns, and they concentrated their fire on the Cincinnati. At 12:15, the Federals fired their first shot. It was naval history, the first use of ironclads against an earthen fort. As the distance closed, a Confederate shell found the Essex. It plowed through her casemate and boiler. Scalding water and steam filled the front half of the vessel, killing and wounding 32. The Essex was through. The Cincinnati was hit 31 times. 1 shell penetrated her iron-plated casemate, killing 1 and wounding 9. The St. Louis was hit 7 times. The Carondelet 6. Meanwhile, Federal infantry struggled mightily through mud and water to reach their objective. Their misery was shared. At 12:30, the Confederacy's big 24-pound rifled gun exploded. The mouth of a 32-pounder was disabled. A premature explosion rendered a 42-pounder useless. By now, only 4 guns could be brought to bear. Things were so desperate that Tillman himself manned a 32-pounder. When Foote's vessels closed to about 600 yards, Tillman knew it was over. He sent up a white flag. Finally acknowledged, the Cincinnati launched a boat. It came in through one of the fort's embrasures. Tillman was taken to the Cincinnati, where he officially surrendered Fort Henry. In the fight that lasted only 75 minutes, 12 officers, 66 men, and 16 more on a hospital boat became prisoners. 20 cannon and plenty of stores were captured, and all done at a cost of 15 killed and 20 wounded. Grant himself finally arrived on the scene at 3 p.m., but by then, the stars and stripes had been fluttering over the fort for almost an hour. 30 minutes after Grant's arrival, Federal infantry reached their assigned position, only to learn that Fort Henry had, embarrassingly for them, surrendered to the United States Navy. And even more embarrassing, Federal infantry had not been able to scoop up many of the Confederates who fled east. Those that escaped reached Fort Donelson around 2 a.m. the next morning. They lived to fight another day, but many who arrived had had no food or water for some 36 hours. The capture of Fort Henry was a Confederate disaster, and it was going to get worse and quickly. With the Tennessee River open, Foote sent his 3 timber-clads, the Tyler, Conestoga, and Lexington, upriver. For 6 days, they wreaked havoc. They destroyed ferries, steamboats, bridges. They severed the vitally important Memphis and Charleston Railroad and penetrated upriver as far as Florence, Alabama, before the naval raid ended February the 12th. Grant and Foote had tasted victory, and they wanted more. Back in St. Louis, an ecstatic Henry Halleck claimed credit for the capture, then immediately began to worry more about what Confederates in Fort Donelson might do to Grant than what Grant might do to them.